inviting the honorable judge to come and give us a lecture today, and to all our organizers also. So his lordship will take 1 hour for the entire session, out of which 45 minutes he will take us through the act, and only 15 minutes for question answer session. So if there is any questions, if you want to ask, only limited questions will be taken up. And if there's any questions you want to ask, you can raise your hands, or you can drop a message to me in the chat window. So based on the paucity of time, we will take up each and every question. So we are just waiting his lordships to join the meet. As soon as he joins, Ramesh sir will just invite his lordships, and then we can start on with the meeting. Thank you, everyone. Ramesh sir, is it fine, sir?
Yes. Watch must come?
Sir, till now, no, sir.
Okay. Wow, so bad. Oh, என்ன பேர்ல ஜாயின் பண்ணிருக்கீங்க? What? Okay. Yes, joined. You have to unmute him. He is able to. Yes, joined. Hey, Prithvi.
Yes, sir.
Lordship has joined.
Yes, sir.
You have to unmute him. GR Swami.
Yes, sir. His username. 1 minute. I'll just unmute. Yes, I have unmuted him. My lords.
Bring him into the screen. Active screen.
Which screen?
Where is Lordship? Unmute பண்ணிட்டியா? Unmute பண்ணிட்டியா?
Name, sir?
GR Swaminathan போட்டுருக்காரு. He is able to see us.
Yes.
No, இருக்காரு. GRS iPad இருப்பார். Yeah, I could see him.
Yes, sir. I just got him, sir. Yeah.
Yeah. So good evening, everyone.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Madras Tax Bar, I welcome Honorable Justice Mr. G.R. Swaminathan for this wonderful evening. And I welcome His Lordship to give a presentation, start his presentation.
Am I appearing in an appropriate angle?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yes.
Yes, my lord.
Vanakkam and good evening to all of you. I am grateful to the Madras Tax Bar for hosting this webinar and giving me this opportunity. It is my second experience when I am addressing on a virtual platform with none present in person before me. I am reminded of an incident in the life of Sir P.S. Sivaswamy Iyer, a legendary lawyer and a great educationist. He gave a 5-part lecture on Hindu law in the Madras University Hall. Iyer was not an attractive speaker. Like me, he would speak in a flat tone without any modulation. Out of respect for Iyer, people came for the inaugural lecture and the hall was full. The second day, it was half. The third day, it became quarter. On the fourth day, the numbers became so thin. And on the last day, there was virtually none in the hall except the poor reporter from the Hindu newspaper. But exactly at the appointed hour and time, Sir P.S. Saraswamy climbed onto the dais and began his speech. The reporter could not contain himself. He went up to the great man and asked for a copy of the lecture, the text of it, and made a suggestion that the lecture can be taken to have been delivered. The great man asked that reporter, well, how your news report will appear tomorrow? The journalist said, sir, the report will say, Sir P.S. Saraswamy gave the concluding part of the lecture and the gist of the talk will also appear. Then Saraswamy asked him, if I do not deliver the lecture today and your report says I have delivered the lecture, will it not be an act of falsehood? So saying, he went on to deliver his talk to an empty hall. Friends, such was the integrity of the man, his sense of duty. We do not see the likes of him. And if this anecdote inspires you to look for his biography and read it, I would feel rewarded. And I can assure you that it would definitely make your lives a little more sublime. Now, let me straight away dive into the topic of the day. Coffeeposa is a statute dealing with preventive detention. If someone commits an offense and if law permits his arrest, then he can be detained. If at the end of the trial he is found guilty, he can be sent to jail also. Detention in such cases is what we call as punitive in nature, something in the nature of a punishment. It is for something which he has already done. Preventive detention, on the other hand, is meant to prevent someone from acting in a manner prejudicial to the objects of the relevant law. It is like a balakot or a Uri surgical strike, a preemptive attack. It's like nipping things in the bud. And that is what is preventive detention all about. Just go through the preamble and the statement of objects and reasons. These days, I take care to say it in full. Statement of objects and reasons. I do not use the acronym SOR. On one occasion, inadvertently, I said SOB. Therefore, I no longer use the acronym. And friends, if you will read the preamble and the SOR, you will know that in the middle 70s, the smuggling activities and foreign exchange manipulations were adversely affecting the economy in a big way. Therefore, the government of the day felt that in order to immobilize these criminal networks and to seize the ill-gotten wealth, you must do something. And this Coffeeposa Act was the outcome of that deliberation. The law was brought in December 1974. It's a tiny piece of legislation. Just sections 1 to section 14, that's all. Even if you include this 5A, 10A and 12A, still it will only be 17 sections in all. Friends, this corona is novel to us. But there is nothing novel about Coffeeposa. I told you just now that this statute came only in December 1974. But the Constitution which was there from 1950 onwards, that itself authorized preventive detention. Entry number 9 of the union list and entry number 3 of the concurrent list deal with preventive detention. Since it is also in the concurrent list, you will find almost all the states having legislated their local laws on this subject. You take Tamil Nadu, you have what is known as Tamil Nadu Act 14 of 1982, or better known as the Gundas Act. Friends, preventive detention is a colonial legacy. It was a wartime measure in several democracies. But when our constitution makers wanted to make it a regular feature, there was considerable opposition in the assembly. If you will read the debates, you will find some very strong statements made by several members. In fact, one member, I think Mahavir Tyagi, he even cursed Dr. Ambedkar, saying if he had had experience in British jails and got beaten up and confined in night lockups, he would not be thinking of introducing this kind of a law. But our founding fathers felt this was necessary, and therefore, and that is how this Article 22(3) to 7 came to be incorporated, dealing with preventive detention. You all know so much of importance is attached to personal liberty and freedom. We've got so many fundamental rights dealing with these aspects. Even arrested persons have certain fundamental rights. 22(1) and 22(2) deal with that. If you arrest someone, you have to inform him of the grounds of arrest. He has got a right to be defended by a legal practitioner of his choice. He has to be produced before the nearest magistrate within 24 hours. But these fundamental rights will not come to the rescue of someone who has been detained under preventive detention. And that is what Article 22(3) says. Now you may ask me whether the Constitution has left the detainees high and dry. No. Certain minimal safeguards have indeed been incorporated. Though I told you that 22(3) to 22(7) deal with preventive detention, the most important provisions are Articles 22(4) and 22(5). The first safeguard is regarding the detention period. To keep a man beyond 3 months in preventive detention, you need a recommendatory report from the advisory board. The board must specifically opine that there is sufficient cause for the detention. And who will be the members of the board? It will consist of persons who are or have been or are qualified to be appointed as High Court judges. Of course, compared to Rajya Sabha and Raj Bhavan, advisory board membership is a less attractive option for retired judges. The other major safeguard is that detention must be in accordance with the relevant law. Article 21 proclaims in ringing terms that personal liberty shall not be denied except according to the procedure established by law. Therefore, the detention must be in consonance with, in accordance with the procedures laid down in the relevant statute dealing with the subject. Thirdly, as soon as the detention is made, the grounds must be communicated to the detainee. What do you mean by grounds? Grounds means the underlying or basic facts or conclusions of facts. Take for instance, a person lands in Chennai airport. he goes through the green channel as if he is not carrying anything. He is intercepted and he is found to be in possession of undeclared 10 kg of gold. See, this will be the primary fact or ground for his detention. And most importantly, the authority must afford the detainee the earliest opportunity to represent against the detention. The parliament by law is to fix the maximum period of detention also. These valuable rights have been inscribed in the constitution itself. Therefore, the first takeaway of this session would be for you to carefully read word by word articles 22, 4 and 5. Sub-articles 4 and 5 of article 22 are the most important ones with which you must acquaint yourself. Prithvi, you can hear me now? Am I audible? Prithvi, am I audible?
Yes, yes, my lords. Very clearly, my lords. No issues.
No problem, na? No problem?
No problem at all, my lords.
No problem, na?
No problem, my lords. You're audible, my lords.
I can go on?
Yes, please, my lords.
Yes.
Thank you.
Now, let us have a glance at some of the provisions of Coffee Bozza Act. The title itself suggests that the purpose of this act is to conserve and augment foreign exchange and prevent smuggling activities. The act from the very beginning extended to the whole of India. This I found it a bit interesting. See, before October 2019, when you take any central enactment, it will read that it extends to the whole of India except the state of Jammu and Kashmir. But as far as Coffee Bozza Act is concerned, from the very beginning, it was extending to the entire India, including Jammu and Kashmir. This provision, I found it a bit interesting from a political angle. Friends, even though Coffee Bozza is a central enactment, it confers the power to detain both on the central government as well as the state governments. The governments can also specially empower certain officials to be the detaining authority, but they will have to be high-ranking officials. If it is central government, he will have to be in the rank of a joint secretary. If it is state government, he will have to be in the rank of a secretary. Section 3 of the Act says that if the authority is satisfied that the person concerned is acting prejudicially to the purposes of the Act, detention order can be passed against him. But if the contraband is a narcotic drug or a psychotropic substance, then Coffee Bozza cannot be invoked. Further, there is another special act. It is called as PIT NDPS Act. Then, if the state government is the detaining authority, then it must forward a report to the central government within 10 days. Now, friends, please go back to Article 22(5) again. What is its mandate? It says the detaining authority must, as soon as may be, communicate the grounds. In order to effectuate this mandate, Section 3(3) of Coffee Bozza Act says the detaining authority must do this communication business within 5 days. Of course, in certain exceptional circumstances, it can go up to 15 days. After the government receives representation from the detainee, the government must refer the matter to the advisory board within 5 weeks. The board must submit the report within 11 weeks. If the board says that there is sufficient cause for the detention, it is open to the government to confirm and continue the detention or to revoke it. But if on the other hand, the board says there is no justification for the detention, then the detention order must be revoked. The government does not have a choice then. The maximum period of detention will be 1 year. But if the prejudicial activity takes place or relates to certain hotspots, the detention period can even be 2 years. Of course, the statute employs the expression within quotes, area highly vulnerable to smuggling, but as my vocabulary has been infected by corona, I am using the word hotspots. At this juncture, I can't restrain myself from referring to a decision reported in 2018 5 SEC 322. 2018 5 SEC page 322. Government of Tamil Nadu versus Kamala. It is a case that arose under Coffee Posa. The ground of challenge was that in the detention order, the period of detention was not mentioned. The council had referred to Commissioner of Police versus Gurubaksh Anandram Biryani, 1988, Supplement SEC 568. 1988, Supplement SEC 568. Gurubaksh Anandram Biryani. And the division bench of the Madras High Court, Shanti versus State, in the year 2010, and argued his writ petition. The Honorable Division Bench went by the said submission and found that the Biryani case squarely covers the point argued by him and allowed the writ petition. The government went to Supreme Court, and before the Supreme Court, it was pointed out that this Biryani decision given in 1988 was swallowed in 1990 by the Supreme Court itself in T. Devaki versus Government of Tamil Nadu. Devaki versus Government of Tamil Nadu. 1990, 2 SEC, page 456. 1990, 2 SEC, page 456. Thus, by citing a overruled decision, a case was allowed by the Madras High Court, and the same was overturned by the Supreme Court. Friends, why I refer to this in particular is only to highlight the fact that the job of a judge is quite difficult. In this age of information overload and having to deal with too many cases, the fairness, competence, and knowledge of the counsel alone that can save us from committing blunders. See, the Act lays down the period of detention. It's 1 year in some cases. If it is in other cases, it's 2 years. But as early as the year 1990, the Supreme Court has already clarified that failure to mention the maximum period of detention will not vitiate the detention order. But by citing an overruled decision, the council literally stole an order from the division bench. And this is something that we all have to bear in mind. Friends, the Act also contains provisions for revoking the detention even before completion of the detention period. Under certain circumstances, the government can also temporarily release the detainee. This, in brief, is the statutory scheme. We can run through it in less than 15 minutes. Friends, I referred to the constitutional provisions. I referred to the provisions of the statute also. I am quite conscious that I am addressing the members of the tax bar. In fact, a friend of mine asked me how this Coffee Poser Act is relevant to the members of the tax bar. Friends, I will narrate an anecdote from the life of the great judge, Justice M.C. Chagla. One day he was sitting in his chambers and a shy young man was waiting there to meet him. The purpose of his visit was to secure a permission letter from Justice Chagla to use the university library. At that time, Mr. Chagla was associated with the Bombay University. Chagla was delighted that the young man was interested in subjects beyond law, including philosophy, literature, and history. That lawyers should know something about everything, and everything about something is a bit of a cliche. That young man was none other than the great Nani Palkhiwala. Therefore, I suggest that you should not confine your study to tax laws alone. In fact, solutions to problems arising within a particular field of law can come from other branches of law. Once I had to decide the validity of an attachment order passed by the tax recovery officer under section 281 of the Income Tax Act. I got the answer from section 11 of the Indian Contract Act. Advocate Srinath Sridevan wrote an article on this in CTC, and the eminent author and very distinguished senior counsel Sri Arvind Datar was kind enough to include it in the revised edition of Kanga and Palkhiwala. This is what I would call as cross-fertilization. You get creative results by superimposing two apparently unconnected frames of reference on and thus it would lead to very interesting results. In fact, this is the hypothesis propounded by the Nobel laureate Arthur Koestler in his book, The Act of Creation. Therefore, I suggest that the study of this branch of law would definitely enrich you. Friends, I have been telling so far that Coffee Poser is meant to deal with certain specific kinds of prejudicial activities relating to foreign exchange and smuggling. The activities can take place in a variety of ways. Some will indulge in Hawala transactions. Some may smuggle gold and other contraband to India from high seas or through airports. Some will indulge in under-invoicing or over-invoicing, misdeclare the goods for the purpose of making false claims under duty drawback schemes. When such persons are detained and the matter comes to you, what you will do? The remedy is to file a writ petition in the nature of a writ of habeas corpus. It will come before the division bench. What will you do then? Of course, you would have fully read Articles 22, 4 and 5 and all the provisions of the Coffee Poser Act. The first thing that you will look for is whether the timelines that have been laid down have been contravened in your case. I'll refresh your memory. 1. Whether the grounds were given within 5 days or at least within 15 days. 2. Whether the state government, in case it is a detaining authority, forwarded the report within 10 days to the central government. 3. Whether the central government made the reference to the advisory board within 5 weeks. 4. Whether the advisory board submitted the report within 11 weeks. And whether the decision to continue or confirm was taken within 3 months. You will thus draw a chronology of events and check the dates to see if the timelines have been strictly adhered to. Closely allied to this theme of timeline is the concept of delay. We all know that the Constitution attaches great value to the concept of freedom and personal liberty. Our judges have always been uncomfortable with this idea of preventive detention. So, the delay principle has been evolved as an effective countervailing instrument. You already noted that the detainee has the fundamental right to make a representation against the detention. That means the authority has the correlative duty to consider the representation. The Supreme Court held that this duty must be discharged expeditiously and without delay. If the delay is unexplained, the detention becomes illegal. Friends, I want you to please note down here, the leading decision on this point is Jaya Narayan Sukul, Jaya Narayan Sukul, S-U-K-U-L versus State of West Bengal, AIR 1970, SC 675, AIR 1970, SC 675. The authority is not an astrologer. He will not know that somebody will indulge in some kind of a prejudicial activity. Then how come he will come to a conclusion? He, of course, will base his satisfaction on the strength of some past antecedent act of the detainee. But if there is delay in passing the order, the connection will get snapped in certain cases. Say a person indulges in an act of smuggling in January 2019. If you pass a detention order in the same month or in February, fine. If you pass a detention order in January 2020, 1 year later, then obviously the connection gets snapped. Thus, delay in passing the order will have a vitiative bearing on the proceedings itself. Likewise, if there is unexplained and unreasonable delay in executing the order, then also the detention will be set aside. The detention order is passed against one A in January 2019, and if he is very much available, but you detain him 1 year later, then what is the point of preventive detention? The whole purpose is lost. Therefore, in that case also, a delay will be a ground for setting aside the order. Friends, Constitution, Article 22(5) talks about representation. But then it must be an effective representation. The provision says the authority, as soon as may be, will furnish the grounds so that and afford the detainee the earliest opportunity of making the representation. The Supreme Court asks, what do you mean by this affording of opportunity? Is it mere supplying of a pen and a paper? No. It means making available additional facts and information which alone would enable the detainee to exercise his right of making an effective representation. One judgment which you must read is State of Bombay versus ARS Vaidya. State of Bombay versus ARS Vaidya. AIR 1951 SC 157. AIR 1951 SC 157. And if there is unreasonable delay in supplying the detainee with copies of the basic documents and materials laid upon in the grounds, then also the detention gets vitiated. Thus, you see how this delay factor comes in for setting aside the detention order. Thus, this concept of delay is another important weapon that the defense counsel can employ for assailing the detention order. So you saw two things by now. First one is timeline. So the second one is the delay aspect. Friends, I told you more than once that by the time Coffee Posa was introduced, almost a quarter century had passed. Thus, a full-fledged jurisprudence on the topic of preventive detention had been developed. All the basic words and phrases, the basic concepts had also been elaborated and interpreted. But in 1970s and 1980s, something interesting happened. All the doctrines that were evolved in connection with judicial review and public law, all those principles came to be superimposed on this branch of law, and so many principles came to be evolved. The concepts like mala fides, perversity, illegality, irrationality, want of jurisdiction, taking into account irrelevant facts, ignoring relevant facts, all these concepts that the tax lawyers employ in the field of administrative law, all these concepts were deployed in the field of preventive detention also, and that is how the jurisprudence got further evolved. If only you read this ARS Vaidya case, you will find how the earliest judges of Supreme Court dealt with Article 22(5) and put so much of content into mere words occurring in the constitutional provisions. Friends, whenever you come across a Coffee Posa case, there will be three things: the detention order, the grounds of detention, and the booklet containing the additional facts. You know what is detention order? The formal order whereby the person is directed to be detained. I told you what do you mean by grounds of detention. They are the basic facts, the reasons. Then, as Vaidya judgment held, the authority must make available further material, further information, which will enable him to make an effective representation. And those additional material you will find in the booklet. Now, let us go back to 22(5) again. It says the detaining authority must communicate the grounds. Supreme Court says the word communicate is a very strong word. Suppose a national from East European country lands in Chennai airport and is found in possession of some contraband. You serve the papers in English or in Tamil. Can you really say you have communicated? He will not understand.
May I come in, my lords? I think your audio has stuck. I think there is some connectivity issue at Justice Swaminathan's place. We will just get back. Ramesh sir, I've unmuted. Can you check? Ramesh sir? We'll just wait for 2 minutes. I think there is some connectivity issue at his end. 2 minutes, he will be back. Thank you, everyone. He has just rejoined. 2 minutes, we will get back. Malad, are you able to hear me, Malad?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Yes, Malad.
I can
I
hear
think
you.
that was. Yes, now we are able to hear you. There was some network issue, I guess.
Yes, yes. I can resume. I
Yes,
can
yes, yes.
resume. Ah,
Yes,
yes.
Chalot. Thank
There was I was referring to I was telling you that the detaining authority must serve the papers, the grounds, everything in a language known to the detainee. If everything is served in a language not known to the detainee, then the whole detention order is vitiated because he will not be able to give his representation and his fundamental rights will be affected. Now, if the detainee is an illiterate, then what he has to do? The detainee, he must be explained everything in a language known to him, and his endorsement, his thumb impression, everything will be taken on the relevant papers. See, the representation given by the detainee to the government must be forwarded by the government to the advisory board within time. The government should also independently consider the representation.
I think there seems to be some connection problem again. We'll just wait for 2 minutes. Your Lordships?
Am I back again?
Yes, Your Lordship.
Yes.
We can hear you. But your video is not yet. Done.
Yeah. I'll see.
We are not able to.
Now?
Yes, now it,
Yes, my lord. Now we are getting it clearly, my lord.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. Just to check whether you have followed me, now you tell me the last point I told you.
My lords, I think the voice just break. So I was just. My lord, you were talking on illiteracy and detaining authority. Yes.
The
If I'm
grounds,
right.
correct. The grounds, everything must be served in a language known to the detenue.
Yes, my lord.
Suppose the detenue is illiterate, then the detaining authority must explain everything to him in the language that he knows, and his endorsement must also be taken. Okay, I think there we stopped. Sorry,
Yes,
I think we stopped Abdul Karim. I said the representation given by the detenue must be forwarded by the government to the advisory board, and the government must also independently consider the representation. If the government fails to independently consider the representation, then that will vitiate the proceedings. This proposition was laid down in Abdul Karim versus State of West Bengal, AIR 1969, SC 1028. Okay. Okay.
Yes, my lord. Yes, my lord. Yes.
See, another important thing that we should bear in mind is that the satisfaction of the detaining authority is necessarily subjective because this very branch of law is called as the jurisdiction of suspicion. And I'm sure you know the difference between subjective satisfaction and objective satisfaction. Objective means there is something over which there can't be a quarrel. 2 plus 2 is 4. It is an objective thing. But whether a particular actress is beautiful or not, you may say she is beautiful, I may say she is not. That is subjective. So, when it comes to satisfaction of the detaining authority, it is invariably subjective. And the courts will not go into the sufficiency of materials. They will only see if there has been a proper approach. They will test if the satisfaction is vitiated by non-application of mind. I'll give you one very simple illustration. A detenue makes a confession. Later, he retracts it. The man who proposes his detention is called as a sponsoring authority, and the man who passes the detention order is the detaining authority. The sponsoring authority must place before the detaining authority all the relevant materials. Suppose he places only the confession of the detenue and withholds the retraction of the confession, and without taking note of the retraction, an order is passed detaining the person, then that order will be set aside because it has not taken into account the relevant material. The courts will say the satisfaction of the authority is vitiated by non-application of mind. An important judgment rendered by the Supreme Court is Asha Devi versus Sivaraj. Asha Devi versus Sivaraj. AIR 1979 SC 447. AIR 1979 SC 447. Vagueness is another ground that can vitiate the proceedings. I do not know if I am sounding vague now. I'll give an illustration and explain. Suppose the authority wants to detain one X on the ground that is indulging in smuggling. If the authority merely alleges that he is a smuggler and does not give any details, then it is obviously a case of vagueness. The Supreme Court held as early as the year 1952 in Ujagar Singh, AIR 1952 SC 350, AIR 1952 SC 350, that vagueness will vitiate the entire proceedings. Why? See, unless you give all the necessary particulars and further details, how the poor detainee can even make a representation? His right to make an effective representation will be seriously affected and infringed if details are not furnished. And that is why vagueness has always been held to be a ground for upsetting the detention orders. But take a case. There are as many as 3 grounds. Ground A, ground B, and ground C. Ground A and B are good grounds. But ground C is a vague ground. It is an irrelevant ground or whatever it be. Then what happens to the detention order? The Supreme Court in Shibbanlal Saxena, a very important judgment, Shibbanlal Saxena, AIR 1954 SC 179, AIR 1954 SC 179, held that the satisfaction of the authority is subjective. Therefore, we really do not know as to whether in the absence of this ground C, the authority would have still passed the detention order. Therefore, ground of vagueness is held to vitiate the entire proceedings. See, you are having a cup of milk. There is one drop of poison. Will it not spoil the entire drink? So, vagueness or irrelevancy or non-existence of the ground, whatever, if one ground is found to be defective or invalid for whatever reason, the entire order was being set aside. See, we have all been advised by our seniors that before the judge, you must argue all your points, good, bad, weak, indifferent, whatever. You do not know what will appeal to the judge. Same way, the detailing authorities also used to put all the grounds, good grounds, bad grounds, defective grounds, vague grounds, everything. But then because of the application of the subjective satisfaction theory, the orders were getting knocked on. The parliament decided to bring in an amendment, and that is section 5 capital A. We just have to have a bare look at that provision, and it would what it says. It says the detention order shall not be deemed to be invalid merely because one or some of the grounds are bad for whatever reason. See, we are all students of constitutional law, and we know the principle of severability. If you can separate that, if you can segregate. Therefore, if there are other good grounds, the bad ground or a defective ground will be segregated, and the order will be allowed to stand. But even though the parliament brought in this section 5A, the Supreme Court in a series of decisions had virtually rendered it useless. But now the clock appears to be turning otherwise. I request all of you to read carefully the recent decision of the Supreme Court in Gautam Jain versus Union of India. Gautam Jain versus Union of India. 2017, 3 SCC 133. 2017, 3 SCC, page 133. In this judgment, section 5A has been fully applied. The court said if the detention order can stand on multiple grounds, merely because one pillar has gone, the entire edifice need not fall down. The detention order can very well rest on the other grounds. There are a number of propositions. I'll just run through one or two of them. See, as early as the year 1964, in Rameshwar Shah case, AIR 1964, SC 334. AIR 1964, SC 334. Rameshwar Shah, SHAW. An interesting question was raised. The question was whether the authority is justified in passing an order of preventive detention against a person who is already in custody. See, what is the object of passing a detention order? To stop him from committing certain prejudicial activities. Well, he is already in custody. If he applies for bail, oppose the bail petition. Why pass one detention order? The Supreme Court, while holding that even if the detainee is in custody, the authority can still pass an order of detention, but went on to say it all depends on the relevant facts obtaining in each case. See, take for instance, someone has been sentenced to imprisonment for a period of 10 years. He is in jail. He has not even applied for suspension of his sentence. Should he be detained under a preventive detention law? Obviously, no. Therefore, it all depends on the individual facts. Only thing is, the authority must be aware that the man is in jail and he must be satisfied about the need for passing a detention order. If there are materials indicating that there is an imminent possibility of the detainee coming out on bail, then the authority need not wait for the man to first come out and thereafter clamp him under this coffee posa. Even when he is still in custody, coffee posa order, detention order can be passed against him. There are a number of case laws on the subject, and from the defense practitioner's point of view, I would want you to make full use of Justice Markandeya Kaddu's judgment in Rekha versus Tamil Nadu. Rekha versus Tamil Nadu, 2011, 5 SEC, page 244. 2011, 5 SEC, page 244. There is one other aspect, and that is legal representation before the advisory board. The Constitution says there is no right to be represented before the board by a person detained under the preventive detention law. Coffee posa also says you can be represented only by your next friend who is not a lawyer. But in the famous A.K. Roy versus Union of India, A.K. Roy versus Union of India, 1982, 1 SEC, page 271. 1982, 1 SEC, page 271. Chief Justice Chandrachud held that the detainee will be entitled to assistance of the lawyer if the detaining authority or the government was represented through lawyer or legal advisors. A recent coffee posa decision in this regard is Choit Nanikram Harchandani versus State of Maharashtra, 2015, 17 SEC 688. 2015, 17 SEC 688. Choit Nanikram Harchandani versus State of Maharashtra. See, in that case, the detaining authority was represented by their officers, but the detainee was denied the benefit of being represented by his counsel. The Supreme Court held that the detention proceedings to be vitiated because the fundamental right of detainee has been violated. The Supreme Court followed A.K. Roy's proposition in this case. Another major point is whether detention order can be challenged at the pre-execution stage. See, the detainee may be out on bail and he may have come to know that the detention order has been passed against him. He'll be on the run. The question is, while he's on the run, can he file a writ petition challenging the detention, or he must formally surrender and then only challenge the order? This issue was decided by a 3 judges bench in Alka Subhash Gadia in the year 1992. Alka Subhash Gadia in the year 1992. The Supreme Court in that case laid down a series of circumstances, 5 in number, and held that only under these circumstances you can maintain a challenge at the pre-execution stage. Then, in a number of subsequent decisions, it was argued as to whether these 5 circumstances are only illustrative or they are exhaustive. Justice Markandeya Kajju felt that they are not exhaustive and only illustrative. This issue was taken up in Subhash Popatlal Dave, 2012, 7 SEC, page 533. And the 3 judges bench decided to have a relook at the issue. The final verdict came in 2014, 1 SEC, page 280. 2014, 1 SEC, page 280. This is the first case in 10 years when a Chief Justice filed a dissenting judgment. Chief Justice Altamas Kabir dissented that the 5 circumstances set out in Alka Subhash Gadia are not exhaustive but only illustrative. But the other 2 judges held that unless you fall within the Alka Subhash Gadia circumstances, there cannot be a challenge at the pre-execution stage. Friends, this is an academic session, and I believe we must subject all the decisions to a critical analysis. I have a number of critical takes on this subject, but I'll make only one point here. It is well settled that the satisfaction of the authority is only subjective in nature. The Supreme Court has held that it will never go into and assess the probative value of the material available to the detaining authority. This has been the consistent position. But from 2008 onwards, the Supreme Court has been singing a different tune. In Ranu Bandari, 2008, 17 SEC 348. 2008, 17 SEC 348. Then Pooja Batra, 2009, 5 SEC 296. 2009, 5 SEC 296. Pooja Batra. Then Gimmick Piotr, G-I-M-A-K-P-I-O-T-R, Gimmick Piotr, 2010, 1 SEC 609. The Honorable Supreme Court has been bringing in the concept of proof to justify an order of preventive detention. I am of the view that these subsequent decisions have not taken note of the binding propositions laid down by the 5-judge Constitution Bench in Haradhan Saha, SCHA Saha, 1975, 3 SEC 198. 1975, 3 SEC 198. In Haradhan Saha, the distinction between preventive detention and punitive detention or prosecution was brilliantly brought out. The Supreme Court said the purposes are different, the authorities are different. In a prosecution, the accused is sought to be punished for a past act. In preventive detention, the past act is merely a material for inference about the future course of probable conduct on the part of the detainee. In one case, a person is punished on proof of his guilt, and the standard of proof is beyond reasonable doubt. Whereas in preventive detention, a man is prevented from doing something which it is necessary to prevent. That is why preventive detention has been always characterized as a jurisdiction of suspicion. That being so, in several decisions commencing from the year 2008, there has been an introduction of the principle of proof. And this, I feel, is not in consonance with the settled principles and propositions. Friends, there is also a connected statute or a cognate statute known as SAFEMA, the Smugglers and Foreign Exchange Manipulators Forfeiture of Property Act 1976, which provides for forfeiture of the properties of such detainees. The ill-gotten wealth of these detainees has to be seized, and that is why SAFEMA was brought in the year 1976. But if the Coffee-Posa order itself is struck down, if the detention order itself is struck down, then SAFEMA cannot even take off. SAFEMA is a separate subject by itself. The purpose of me referring to SAFEMA was that in quite a few cases relating to SAFEMA, I found that the Supreme Court is referring to cases arising under the Income Tax Act. Why I am saying this is that there is a close link between one branch and another branch. Friends, I always think that the image of a smuggler in our imagination is quite different. He does not excite our dislike as in the case of a murderer or a rapist. You all know this Varadaraja Mudalia, who was a Mumbai Don. I know many Tamilians used to feel proud that Varadabai was a fellow Tamilian. But going beyond such psychoanalysis, I would only want to tell you that a serious study of this Coffee-Posa will definitely improve the knowledge of constitutional law. You know, the very first major constitutional case, A.K. Gopalan versus State of Tamil Nadu, AIR 1950 SC, page 27. This Gopalan case arose out of preventive detention. And the Coffee-Posa was inserted in the 9th schedule so that it can be made immune from challenge. Its constitutional validity was upheld in 1994, 5 SEC, page 54. 1994, 5 SEC, page 54. Attorney General for India versus Amritlal Rajivan Das. It is a 9 judges bench decision. So, you know, when Coffee-Posa was brought in, FERA was there. But FERA is no longer there. It has been replaced by FEMA. Therefore, a second challenge was mounted. But once again, the validity was sustained in Dropti versus Union of India. DROPTI, Dropti versus Union of India. 2010, 1 SEC, page 499. Why he made a rapid reference to these few decisions was that there is a very close link between Coffee-Posa and Constitution. See, the tax law is obviously closely linked to Constitution. Therefore, I strongly recommend that a proper and in-depth study of Coffee-Posa Act will definitely make you a better tax lawyer. Friends, thank you for your patience.
Thank you, my lords, for taking us through the entire Coffee-Posa Act and then citing so many decisions. I have tried my level best to post all the decisions in the chat box so that if the participants were not able to note it down, they can see that and write it again, my lords. My lords, with your lordship's permission, my lords, if your lordship has some time, my lords, can we take up a few questions?
Yes.
My lords?
Yes, 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 yes.
Thank you, my lords. So I will, participants, whoever has raised hands in the app, I will unmute you, and then one by one we can ask questions to the lordships. depending on the time. As Malad, the first question is from Mr. Prasad Malad. I'll just unmute him.
Before that, let one
Yes, ma'am.
participant say whether I was audible and clear.
Yes, Malad, you were audible and clear, Malad. In between, there was some connectivity issue,
That is,
which,
that is
which went well, Malad. You were perfectly clear, Malad. Thank you, Malad. Mr. Prasad, you can ask your question for Malad.
Yes. Yes, Millard. Very good evening, Millard.
good evening.
Very good
I
evening.
can't
Millard.
see you. I can't see you. But I can
Kindly
hear
turn
you. I
on
can
your
hear you.
kindly
I
turn
can
on
hear
your
you.
video. Who was asking questions? Thank you.
Very good evening, Millard.
Good evening.
Millard, can I ask one question, Millard? With great
Yes,
respect.
go on.
Yes. Millard, after passing a detention order, that advisory board has been revoked. That detention order, which was passed by the competent authority.
Hmm.
Government can appeal before the Supreme Court, Millard. But while challenging that advisory board revoked order.
The OP advisory board,
Yes.
if the advice is binding on the government, if it is in
Yes,
favor of the detainee. The government, if
Yes.
suppose the advisory board says the detention is
Yes,
justified, the government
Yes,
can
madam.
still revoke it. But if the advisory board says the detention is not justified, the government has no choice but to revoke the detention order. It cannot challenge. No, it cannot.
Millard, one more question, Millard, with respect, Millard.
Please, go on.
Well, after arrest,
Go on.
after accused has been arrested by the state, Millard, while there is any classification, there is any period has been given for the passing the detention order, Millard, after arrest has been made.
I don't get you. Repeat your question. You are not clear.
Yes, let's accused has been arrested, Millard. Accused has been secured
Yes,
by the
yes,
police
yes.
and arrested, and
Okay.
he was remanded in the judicial custody, Millard. There is any time limitation for passing a detention order by the authority, Millard, after the arrest by the accused?
The thing is, we have to apply the concept of reasonable period. See, between
okay,
that offending act and the
Yes.
passing of the detention order, there must
Yes,
be a close proximity. That's all. Reasonable. There's a specific time limit. No. It should
There
be
is no
reasonable
specific
period.
time limit. Oh,
No,
yes,
no
yes,
specific time limit, but you see,
yes,
I'll give one simple example.
Yes.
The offending act takes place in January 2019. If the
Yes.
detention order is passed in January 2020, there is a
Yes.
snapping of the link. There must
Yes,
be a
ma'am.
live link between that offending act and the passing of the order. That's all.
yes,
If the
yes,
link is snapped, the order will be set aside by the court.
yes, Millard. Millard, thank you very much, Millard.
Thank
One more request, Millard.
And tell me,
Millard,
Fine.
your lordship, if possible, Millard, get one more classes for criminal trial proceedings, Millard, for the defense
Yes,
is
sir.
concerned.
yes, you form a group and then tell me through Prithvi. I'll come, definitely.
Definitely, my lord.
Thank you, Millard. Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Prasad. Thank you, my
Thank
lord.
you, Mr. Ravi. Thank you.
My lord, with your permission, my lords, there are two more questions, my lords.
Go on. I am free only.
Yes, my lord. Mr. Krishna Bhagwat, he asked a question in the beginning of the session itself. I just asked him to wait when the question answered. Mr. Krishna, you're unmuted. You can ask your question. Thank you.
My lords, good evening, my lords. It was a very great session.
Good evening.
My lords, just one question, my lords. If the detention is quashed, and before the detention was quashed, the show cause notice was issued, what is the consequence, or whether the competent authority can proceed based on the show cause notice after the detention being quashed?
You asked about Safima?
I think yes, Safema.
There are two things here.
Yes.
The Constitution as well as the statute, they confer some procedural rights on the detainee. If the if on the ground of some procedural violation, the continuance of the order alone is set aside and the main order is left intact, the SAFEMA proceedings can continue. If the detention order itself is set aside, SAFEMA proceedings will have to be terminated. They have to go. If the detention order goes, SAFEMA also automatically goes.
Okay.
Goes.
But there are cases where after the detention is quashed, the forfeiture order is being passed. So I think even the forfeiture order will not stay.
Will not stand.
Thank you, my lords.
Thank you, Mr. Krishna. Thank you, Your Lordship. Balaji, sir.
Good evening, my lord.
Good evening.
I just have a question. Am I audible, my
How
lord?
are you? You tell me, how are you?
Fine. Recovering.
Tell me.
My lord, I only have one question. If I'm right, if your lordship referred to Shivan Lal and the consequential amendment of 5A,
Yes.
therein, if one of the grounds is vague, etc., only after that amendment possibly the detention could be valid. Even if one of the grounds is vague, still it could be valid. I am only trying to draw
Correct.
comparison of the said provision. Is it one which would apply only for a criminal law or case like detention, or would it apply even for civil proceedings like income tax? The reason is the reopening of the income tax assessments happen, probably according multiple reasons. If any one of the reasons fail, should the same jurisprudence apply for the tax proceedings too?
I am not a tax lawyer, and I
It doesn't matter, my lord. I only wanted to know whether this is something peculiar to criminal law.
I would think it would be peculiar. No, it would apply to any branch of law where the satisfaction is subjective in nature. If it's subjective in nature, then this principle laid down in Shivan Lal Saxena has to be invoked.
The principles of severability, unless it is provided in the law specifically, will not apply automatically.
Correct.
Obligation.
Correct.
Thank you, Balaji, sir. My lords, with your lordship's permission, my lords, one last question, my lords.
And go on, one.
Yes. Mr. Hari.
My lords, thank you for the wonderful lecture. We should be really thankful to Corona and waste in times like this, I believe. To have heard a very good lecture from your lordship. My lordship, my question relates to SAFEMA again. I had the opportunity to go through the Amritlal case, wherein they had raised 5 questions. I'll just refresh your lordship's memory with regard to the first question, my lord. The first question was that Coffee Posa was not relatable to either of the list 1 of the 7th schedule or list 3 of the 7th schedule. That being the case, and each of these lists, that is entry 9 and entry 3, respectively of list 1 and list 3, they have limited the subjects in which an act, a legislation with regard to preventive detention can be legislated. That question was raised before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court was of the view that they adopted the first thing is they said that it will come within the security of the state. The second thing is that they said that they did not need to go into this aspect much, and they applied the principle evolved in the case of Union of India versus HES Dillion, which says that if it does not come within the list 2, wherein the state does not have the right, or it is not limited to the state alone, in such case the center may be, the center is enabled to legislate on any subject. So that is the reasoning that had been given by the Supreme Court. My question is, my lord, is this reasoning correct in view of the fact that, point number 1, it is a case of preventive detention wherein the forefathers of the constitution, they have clearly, the founding fathers, they have really thought as to what is the areas in which such legislations can be made. Now, when they have limited to a certain set of things, especially when it comes to preventive detention, application of this Dillian case in other subjects, maybe probably in taxation or public good or anything else is fine. But when it comes to a subject with regard to preventive detention, is the application correct? Is my question, my lord. I just had this doubt because
A 9 judges bench has answered, and we'll take it up for a discussion later, definitely. But it's a very deep issue. It's a very deep issue.
yes, my lord.
See, it has been put in the 9th schedule precisely for that reason.
Yes,
The
yes.
reason for
No, that is true. 9th schedule it has been put into, but essentially, whether the state has got, I think the putting it in the 9th schedule came subsequently, not immediately at the time of enactment. I did not think it was there. It was there was a time gap, a stopgap period between the enactment and this adding it to the 9th schedule. So I believe that gave a small gap for this question to be raised. But because the issue was because when they have limited the provision to a particular level, wherein these subjects alone can be legislated, especially when it comes to a subject which is affecting Article 21, wherein the liberty is going to be prejudiced. Whether in such a situation, an application of the Dillian case, whether that would, because the Dillian case is very simple, test is very simple, whether it is coming under list 2, we'll stop with that. If it is not coming under list 2, then the center can, the parliament is free to enact that anything under the sun. That is fine. But the application of that, given giving the view of Article 21, whether it could possibly go together, is something that struck my mind.
I will have a relook at this issue from what you have now said, definitely.
Yes, my lord. It is paragraph. There's the firfirst question of the Amritlal case. Question of Amritlal case, my lord.
But personally speaking, after A.K. Raj's judgment, there was nothing unconstitutional about the Coffee Post Act. I do not find anything unconstitutional in it. And that is why in Draupadi, subsequently, when a challenge was mounted, the Supreme Court simply brushed it aside. The issue is more on implementation, not on the constitutionality of it.
No, when this legislation had come, if my memory is correct, when this legislation had come, it was during the time of emergency, wherein they were first establishing the rules with regard to the economic stability of the country. And in order to curb this economic stability, so that time the settlement of this question of economic. Sorry, my lord.
But I told you, no, Coffee Posta is not something that came in as a first piece of legislation. See, Detention Act was there in 1950. Then Visa was there. So many acts are there. In fact, structurally also, Coffee Posta is on the same lines. There's nothing new about any of the provisions.
Is my lord, only the difference I thought between
Mr. Hari, I think we are running short of time. I'm sorry to intervene.
No, be thankful. Yeah.
Thank you. My lords, with your permission, I would just request Hemalata ma'am to just come in and tell a few words, my lords.
Sure.
Hemalata ma'am.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes.
Good evening, everybody. I thank my lords for the wonderful session on behalf of Madras Tax Bar. I thank Honorable Justice Mr. Seshashayi and the Senior Counsel N. Venkatraman and Senior Counsel Sundareswaran for being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, my lords, for your time, my lord, and to take us through the entire act. Yes, my lords. This was a very new subject, and there are a lot of juniors who also benefited with this session, my lords. So I once again thank His Lordship, and I thank Ramesh sir for organizing such a beautiful seminar today, and all the other organizers, my seniors, we've been organizing such seminars every day for last 2 weeks now. So I'm really thankful to all the seniors and all the members of Madras Tax Bar. And I thank all the participants. Tomorrow again, we will be hosting a seminar soon. So the details of it will be shared. I once again thank you, my lord, for giving us this time and to taking us through during this lockdown. I hope it was very beneficial for all of us. Thank you.